Good evening. Welcome to the City of Malden Board of Appeal public meeting. Today's November 16th, 2022. The Malden Board of Appeal will hold a public hearing Wednesday, November 16th, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time at Malden City Hall, 215 Pleasant Street, Room 106, Herbert L. Jackson Council Chambers. This meeting may be recorded by Urban Media Arts, formerly known as Malden Access Television. This meeting is now open, and first we're going to do a roll call.
Okay.
I'm just turning this on.
You good? Okay. Yeah. Kramer?
Here.
Sullivan?
Here.
Sherwin?
Here.
Okay, Ms. King is not here. Bilgan?
Here.
Chu?
Here.
Codeverdian?
Yes.
Thank you.
Did everybody have a chance to review the minutes from the last meeting? Would somebody like to make a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Okay, approval of minutes. Sullivan?
Yes.
Sherwin?
Yes.
Bilgan?
Yes.
Kramer?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Who is going to be voting in King's absence tonight? We might want to,
Armin for 385 Medford and Sue for 204 Main.
And I don't think I can actually vote on 385 Main. I wasn't at the original meeting, so I think both the alternates have to take mine.
Well, she recused herself.
No, so.
I live around the corner.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I think it might be just a four-member body on that case.
so they revised everything.
This is a whole revised plan from the original.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess I can do it then.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, so the first petition we're going to hear tonight is petition 22-007 by Patrick P McDonald, Esquire, on behalf of S&M Enterprises, LLC, for a variance of Title 12, Chapter 12, Code of the City of Malden as amended through February 1st, 2022, -12.6.010, Table of Intensity Regulations, specifically area, setback rear as per plan CMID 046598-2022 at the property known as and numbered 385 Medford Street, Malden, Mass, and also known by City Assessor's Parcel ID 040180-001. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Attorney Patrick McDonald on behalf of petitioner with offices at 479 Eastern Avenue. As the board, I'm sure, recalls, this matter was before it about 2 months ago originally, with a slightly different plan at that time, and as a consequence of, I guess I'd refer to them as some procedural irregularities, no substantive action was taken by the board in that original meeting 2 months ago, and it's been rescheduled for tonight. The petitioner, however, took advantage of the feedback offered by the board as well as comments from individuals who appeared in opposition to the proposal at that time to make some changes to the proposal. And those revised plans have been submitted or resubmitted to the board for tonight's hearing. They're not particularly significant except in the sense that they help to make this a more palatable, or hopefully more palatable, petition for the board and for interested parties and abutters and neighbors. Specifically, what's been done is the building itself, the structure that was originally proposed, has been significantly reduced in size and footprint on the lot. If the board recalls, the original application sought the construction and operation of a service, motor vehicle service facility that would have had 2 bays for oil changes and 1 bay for state inspections of motor vehicles, And the bay that was to be utilized for state motor vehicle inspection was going to be a drive-through setup where a customer could pull in one end, stop somewhere in the middle and get the inspection done, and when concluded, pull directly out of the building through a curb cut on West Street onto West Street. They've eliminated any drive-through aspect of it. They still have 3 bays. If you take a look at the plan, you see a smaller building that still contains 2 or proposed oil change bays and 1 proposed inspection bay, but there's no drive-through component to the structure anymore. People will pull in and back out just the way they do it at pretty much any other conventional service station when getting an oil change or an inspection. They've also moved the building from its previous location, which had it 6 feet from the rear property line of the rear abutter, and therefore was 14 feet non-compliant for zoning purposes because the rear yard setback under zoning is 20 feet. They've moved it 20 feet out, so they no longer encroach into the rear yard setback and no longer need or seek variance relief related to that dimensional control. The remaining dimensional control that is problematic for them is the one about which they can literally do nothing, and that is a failure to meet minimum lot size under zoning for a parcel in this zoning district. That minimum lot size is 10,000 square feet. This lot is approximately 9,500 square feet. Although the petitioner does own the property immediately butting it to the east, he operates a gas station and motor vehicle repair station there. That is a non-conforming grandfather lot. There's no way he could carve up that and add land to this lot even if he wanted to do it, because you're not permitted to do that under zoning. So there is literally no way to make this a bigger lot unless you can get land from either his existing parcel next door or conceivably the rear abutting parcel currently owned by the Skinners. I don't know if they could even carve their lot up without violating zoning, but even if they could, we wouldn't expect a rear residential abutter to start slicing pieces of land off to give it to this commercial use next door. So I represent to the board and reiterate my earlier argument, as I think that this petition does in fact meet the statutory criteria for a variance in the board's discretion. It's a unique lot. If you look at the shape of the lot, you see it's tilted, it's angled at the southern end, it's angled at the eastern end. It has an odd little cutout in the northeastern corner. This is an irregularly shaped lot, and it is not consistent with what most lots in that zoning district have for a shape. It is unfortunately modestly undersized by approximately, again, 500 feet, which represents an approximate 5% deficiency in lot size for a 10,000 lot, which I suggest to the board is again, de minimis as a practical matter. The hardship here, I think, is apparent, because now we're at a point where this petitioner has a lot with which he can do nothing without the benefit of this modest, de minimis lot size variance we're asking for right now. I believe Commissioner Miller could confirm that, again, he can do practically nothing or can do nothing at all with this lot without the variance that's being sought. And this lot is really no different. In fact, it's much better when compared to most other lots in the city right now. If you were to take a survey of the City of Malden right now and look at lots located in zoning districts like this, you'd be hard-pressed to find one that meets the 10,000 square foot requirement. In fact, you'd be hard-pressed to find one that comes as close to the 10,000 square feet as this petitioner's lot does. And I would suggest respectfully to the board that a grant of relief in the board's discretion on this petition would not substantially derogate from the intent and purpose of the zoning ordinance. We appreciate that the zoning ordinance prefers bigger lots for this use in a zoning district such as this, 10,000 square feet. But as I said, this petitioner almost meets that. And granting a modest variance for a less than 5% deficiency on lot size does not fly in the face, does not insult the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance, especially that portion of it that regulates lot size under these circumstances. So I believe we made a persuasive argument for meeting those statutory criteria, and that this is certainly a petition that the board, again, in its discretion, because we understand that the board is never compelled to grant variances, that they always do so in their sound discretion. But we believe that this is a petition upon which the board can act in its sound discretion and grant the variance by meeting statutory criteria for that purpose. So we'd ask the board to take a further look at the revised plans and consider them accordingly. I'd like to reiterate, the board can see that Ward Councilor Condon is here. He's indicated he'd prefer not to speak, but he has already represented in no uncertain terms his support of this petition. A number of neighbors who were present during the original hearing 2 months ago could not make it tonight, but they've asked Councilor Condon, and he's asked me, or through me, to inform the board that they continue to strongly support it. Specifically, the Skinners, who have the West Street property immediately abutting the rear of the subject parcel, they've expressed to Councilor Condon, they continue to support this petition. If you recall, they had some concerns about the fence. This petitioner will build whatever fence the Skinners would like to see, on whatever new fence on the property line between the two parcels they'd like to see. The plan you see shows a 6-foot fence. I was just informed by Commissioner Miller that you can have a 7-foot fence. I believe that the Skinners indicated an 8-foot fence. You can't get an 8-foot fence unless you get a special permit from the planning board, but you can have up to a 7-foot fence by right. And also, recent changes to the ordinance, the ordinances require that in a situation like this, there must be a tapering of the fence to a lower level of about 4 feet or so as you approach the ingress and egress means for both properties on West Street. It again is and we'll state for the record, this petitioner will construct any fence the Skinners would like to see in any material and configuration they'd like to see. And it appears that existing zoning regulates the height and the tapering anyway, and it's going to be essentially what they've asked for as well. So we think we've done significant outreach to the surrounding property owners. We think we've addressed the concerns of the most impacted property owners, that being the Skinners, who immediately and directly abut the property. And for those reasons, for the reasons I previously mentioned, for the reasons that we have ward councilor support and strong neighborhood support and support of the immediate residential abutting neighbor, I think this is a petition that the board in its discretion can confidently grant, and we ask the board to do that. Mr. Fayyad is here. If the board has any additional questions related to the project, I'm happy to speak, and I'm happy to take any questions from the board as well.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
Can anything be allowed there as of right? I mean, is there any project that could be built there without a variance?
I don't believe so because of lot size, Member Sherwin. It's 500 square feet short of the 10,000 square foot minimum, and that means nothing can happen there without relief from this body.
So you're asking for lot size variance. Is there another, was it a setback as well?
Well,
Not
originally
anymore.
there was setback, but we've revised the plan and relocated the structure on the lot, so we no longer need that relief because we're not in the rear yard setback anymore.
So lot size is the only
That's
variance?
correct.
Any other questions from the board?
Yeah, I do have a question. Is there a chance where you could get permission to combine the 2 units and make it buildable, or would it still have a hardship even after combining the existing 100 Highland Avenue parcel with the parcel in front of us for a variance?
I haven't, to be perfectly candid, I haven't given that any consideration. I mean, merging 2 parcels in general is something that conceivably could be done. I don't know that that's a particularly viable way for this, given the existing use of the other parcel. But in all honesty, I can't answer the question definitively, and I don't want to mislead the board. Nobody's given that any thought really at this point in time.
I think you said the lot next door is non-conforming already anyway, so.
Well, it is, so you can't remove
wouldn't-
land from it,
Right.
but you can always add land to parcels. As a general rule, you can combine parcels to meet minimum square footage requirements or other dimensional controls.
Yeah.
It's certainly a possibility, but we haven't been moving in that direction.
Right. But they're both non-conforming, so if you join them, you'll just have one big non-conforming lot, no?
Well,
Yeah, there might be
possibly,
other hardships, but
Yeah,
maybe not
yeah.
the square feet.
Oh, okay. Okay, any more questions from the board? We have a few people here, that, I'm assuming would like to speak in opposition. I just want to let you know that I'll either let you speak or read the letters you sent. I won't do both.
Those letters, the letter that was written was prior to the new plans.
Oh, okay.
We don't know, we didn't see the new plans, and we don't know how that's gonna change our opposition. Because we about the Skinners, and everyone else in the neighborhood is supporting us. It seems that you're on the side depending on where the traffic flow is. So I'm not
Oh,
sure.
can you actually come up to the microphone? I forgot, sorry.
before, I just said one last thing. Commissioner Miller informs me that one problem with the suggestion of combining the lots is you're not allowed to have two principal structures on a single lot, and combining those two lots would create a single lot with two principal structures on it if we were to go forward with a new building on the increased lot.
Gotcha. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is, I'm Susan Catricala. I live at 80 Oakland Street. My house is on the corner of Oakland and West. And I'm next door to my mother's house, which abuts the Skinner's property. This is Paula Angelo. She lives on the second floor with her parents on the same property that abuts the Skinners. The letter that was written prior to the changes, seeing or hearing anything about the changes. And most of what we're concerned about is that this just doesn't seem to be a fit for this heavily populated, family-oriented neighborhood where the traffic is increasing constantly. Medford Street is a mess. And the way the traffic is, whether it's going out the front of the building or the side, to have all these cars exiting onto Medford Street. West Street, now everybody cuts off of Medford, comes up the opposite side of the street and flies up West Street to avoid the light. So now you're gonna have people coming out of those bays. They're not gonna wanna take a left to the light because it's too congested. So they're gonna turn to the right and do what everybody else does and feed all the traffic still onto West Street. We have so many new young families moving in. The park across the street from the building on West, between West and Sheridan, I would say 20 to 25 people a day walk their dogs on their park, which means you have a lot of pedestrians walking around. The bus stop is over there. I'm just wondering, when these cars are exiting onto Medford Street, how do you control the safety issue with people walking on the sidewalk down Medford Street? I mean, it's a heavily populated area, and we're just worried about our property value, we're worried about pollution, and mostly the traffic. So I don't know what the changes do regarding our complaints, and I don't know, I just know that everyone in our neighborhood that signed that petition was completely against it. But it also seemed to reflect what side of Medford Street you lived on. If you lived on where you turn the left, except for the Skinners, because they abut the property and they have personal reasons, we respect whatever they, if they're in favor of it, that's fine. But we just felt that it wasn't a good fit for the neighborhood. Paula, do you?
Okay. So just, so with the new plans, there are no cars exiting onto Medford Street.
Onto West.
Onto West, yes,
No.
there will be.
But there will be 3 bays emptying cars onto Medford Street who have to make the choice. Do I try to pull into Medford Street that's always congested? Or do I take the right turn and come up West Street, like everyone else does?
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it's gonna be a busy place, as it is the gas station. You know, he does a great business there, that's fine. But I'm self-employed. In my business, when I make any changes to my business, I have to think about how it's gonna impact the neighborhood. And there isn't a person in the area who doesn't agree that that building has to come down. It's an eyesore, and we wanna see something else in there. It's been nothing since Fajoni's was there, and that was many, many years ago. And it was great, it was a small store, but, you know, we don't really agree with putting something like that on that corner.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have anything they want to?
I have a question. I guess, I don't understand why there needs to be 3 curb cuts for the lot and not just 2. I don't know if there's like a reason for that. Because there's 2 curb cuts on West Street. and
There's
then
employee parking behind the building.
Okay.
And do we have any guarantee that the overflow traffic isn't gonna park on West Street? Because the enforcement of a lot of the businesses about as far as the parking is very poor. So we have concerns about that.
I think some of these issues you're bringing up will be the case with any project that tries to build here, which will need a variance. So I think some of the concerns you might want to bring up with your city councilor to make improvements. I think a lot of people are reaching out and trying to make improvements for pedestrian walkways and traffic.
Yeah.
But that's not really something we can address today with this project.
I know. And
But
it's
I hear you.
the noise, the pollution.
It's a mess everywhere in Malden, and
I
people
know,
are slowly tackling.
It's terrible. It's just, everything's getting too congested. And it's, you know, we just note that if you're on a certain time of day, you're coming down Medford Street, the line is all the way halfway down the street, and the cars come and they go up the one way and try to get down fast enough to West Street, and they do that now. So I was thinking, I don't know what kind of a business could go in there, but something where you don't have a constant flow of new people coming all the time, instead of, you know, like maybe some sort of housing or something where you have a limited amount of people coming and going. You know, but I don't know. I don't know enough about it to know what the solution is. I just know that it's not, we just don't feel that it was good for our property value as well. But that building is, we're all in agreement that something has to be done.
I think I asked you this question last time about the curb cuts on West Street.
What do you mean by the curb cuts?
Where the cars exit.
Yeah,
Okay.
so there's still 2 curb cuts like the previous design, so they didn't take those out. So
Right.
would it improve your stance to at least take the curb cuts out of West Street?
I'm not sure. If you could tell me by doing that it's gonna that it would alleviate the traffic, but I don't know. I think no matter what end of the building they come out, they're gonna try to avoid that light, and they'll turn around and go down West Street. You know, I think coming onto West from the back of the building is also a safety issue. We use the Salem 5 Bank. It's treacherous to walk down, to cross Medford Street. So I don't know if that's gonna change anything. And I know there's a lot of people in my neighborhood that they would have to hear all this new information before they would, you know, change their mind. They were thinking the way the building was done before, so I don't know if it would change their opinion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is anybody else in opposition of this that would like to speak? Same thing, yeah. Anyone in favor? I have one question. So there's 3 bays.
Yes.
I would think at a maximum, there's probably going to be 12 cars an hour. A maximum, that's if you're just slammed all day long.
No, like I can give you, I'm sorry, good evening.
Good evening.
Edgar Fayad, 16 Rolling Lane, Dover, Massachusetts. I can give you what we do now and what I project that we could do in the future. Basically, we do about 300 stickers, 300 to 350 stickers a month. and usually people are a creature of habits. You know, they trust one place, they go to it. It's between 6 and 10 vehicles a day. It gets busier the last 2 days of the month and the first 2 days of the month. So currently, it's probably around 10 cars for inspection. And oil changes, we do 3 to 5, 6 oil changes a day. If that doubled, and the oil change, the stickers, I don't think it doubles because, again, as I said, I have other location that does stickers and people they trust someplace, they keep going to it. So I assume that you do 20, 25 cars a day in total in that location. The reason I'm doing this, probably it doesn't make a lot of sense financially, but it will probably bring more business to the station itself because people will have a nicer waiting area, more kids friendly when they come to sit in. And I leave like the heavy work at the station on the other side so people don't witness that, like, you know, grease, oil. It will be much cleaner. Whoever is coming, you know, they're not gonna drop their car, so they're gonna wait for it. It's gonna take 10 to 15 minutes if it's an oil change or a sticker. So basically there is a place where they can wait, which is clean and more friendly to families and kids. And we leave the heavier repair on the other sides at the station. So that's the reason I'm splitting it this way.
Okay. So just for discussion's sake, you're saying 25 cars a day. If I say 50 cars a day, that's about 6 cars an hour.
Yeah.
Just wanted to point that out.
That seems a lot less than a lot of other uses, so.
If
it's
it was a
good number to-
McDonald's, you'd have a lot more than that. I just wanted to point that out. Or a lot of other uses probably have a lot. If you're a convenience store, it would probably have a lot more traffic. I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question. I'm wondering if there's a way to get rid of one curb cut on West Street and maybe only have employees exit on West Street, and that way all customers would have to exit, you know, without maybe causing issues with traffic. Did you look at trying to reduce the number of curb cuts at all?
I didn't look into it. We just did it for convenience, for if you know, if it was like busy on the front of the building, it will be easier to have like another access in the back of the building, and also for employees. But the building is significantly smaller, so it doesn't make a lot of sense to go to make that turn basically. But I didn't look into just cutting the curb cuts.
If I could also, to that point, state that the current curb cut configuration with ingress only at a new curb cut on Medford Street and egress only from 2 curb cuts onto West Street, one of which we expect to be utilized significantly less than the other. We believe that that actually addresses, to the greatest extent possible, traffic concerns on the site. If for instance, if the Medford Street curb cut were to be made ingress and egress, you'd have people coming out. If they're turning right on Medford Street, that's probably not a big deal. If they're trying to turn left on Medford Street with that signalization right there and a backup that I'm sure everyone's familiar with, that's a problem. You're going to have people backed up on the lot trying to take a left onto Medford Street. I appreciate that anybody who lives on a predominantly residential street would prefer that nobody drive down it, but the people exiting onto West Street are far less of a hazard, in my opinion, far less of a traffic hazard, far less of a pedestrian hazard than if you had cars both coming in and out on a curb cut on Medford Street with some turning right, some turning left. I think that's a nightmare scenario from a traffic perspective, to be perfectly honest. It's a tough intersection, and the property is located very close to the light, to the signalization at the intersection. So left turns out of that lot are going to create a lot of problems. I could be wrong, and I'm not a traffic engineer, but I offer that as explanation for why we wanted one curb cut on Medford in and curb cuts on Medford, on West, in only on Medford, out only on West. That improves traffic flow on site. That, we believe, improves traffic flow on the two streets abutting the parcel in question.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board?
I guess in terms of like pedestrian safety, because that was one of the issues that was brought up, I mean, can we require them to put like, you know, like flashers or like an alarm or something, so like if a car is coming, it's probably more so like, more of a concern for the curb cut that's like right on the property line, especially if they're putting fencing out. You know, that visibility might be an issue when people are turning out, because I think West Street is one way going down.
The fence is going to drop down to 4 feet as it approaches the street.
Okay.
Yeah, that has to be done now by fairly new ordinance. When a 6 foot or more fence begins to reach the point where it's going to create visibility issues, it has to now taper down. I don't know the dimensions. Commissioner Miller, I'm sure, could rattle them off the top of his head, but it will taper down to a level that allows people driving cars to see over the fence at that point.
Do you have an opinion on the curb cut strategy?
I mean, frankly, when I look at it, I don't see why there would be a need for 2 curb cuts on West. I think they could probably get by with one.
I think that's it. The back one is so they could utilize that back area. So say you could pull in tandem cars for employee parking, and then you can exit.
I mean, I guess if they're planning that, like, they're gonna block it off, but if it's still accessible, I mean, presumably you could always get rid of the one that's like closer to Medford Street and just have everybody wrap around the building and come out that one curb cut.
Mr. Chairman, members, I've just consulted with the petitioner, and again, if eliminating that more northerly curb cut on West Street makes this more palatable to the board and more palatable to abutters and neighbors, Mr. Fayad is willing to take that out. We don't think it creates as much of a problem as some other people do, but it's not super critical to the proposal to have a second curb cut. That's the one we think that would be utilized far less than the other one anyway, and would be principally for employee egress from the property, but we can eliminate that curb cut and have just one exit-only curb cut on West Street and one entry-only curb cut on Medford Street. And revising the plan to reflect that is a very simple matter, both from the site engineer and from the architect. So.
I mean, I'm not a traffic engineer, I'm just thinking like generally pedestrian-wise, you know, to have to navigate less potential like vehicle exits would be like a little bit more pedestrian-friendly.
I would agree.
All right, any other questions or comments? Did I mention that there's an alternate member voting? Okay. Does anybody feel like making a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve this variance with the exception of a maximum of 2 curb cuts as they see fit. Based that there's a hardship for anyone coming forward trying to use this parcel.
Does anybody want to second that motion?
I'll second it.
One question before there's an actual vote. You said a maximum of 2 curb cuts, so you're not specifying which one they get rid of?
No, I think that the redesign will be telling, but I agree that it would be more pedestrian friendly to have a total of 2 and not 3.
Well, my only thought about that means that both of them, I think, could be on is it on West Street, am I saying that right? Both could be on West Street as opposed to Medford. So would it be better to say one on West and one on Medford?
Yeah. If the board agrees, I think that sounds like a good amendment. Thank you.
Right, a motion by Bilgan, second by Cordovarian to approve the variance with one change, the maximum of 2 curb cuts, one on West Street and one on Medford. So they'll have to eliminate one on West Street, one curb cut. All right. Sullivan?
Yes.
Sherwin?
Yes.
Bilgan?
Yes.
Cordovarian?
Yes.
Kramer?
Yes.
All in favor? Petition 22-007 is granted.
I think the lady on the floor had a question. The blonde lady, she like raised her hand. Maybe she doesn't have it anymore.
No.
Okay, so the next petition we're going to hear is petition 22-010 by Scott Fitzpatrick on behalf of 204 Main Street LLC for a variance of Title 12, Code of the City of Malden as amended through October 1st, 2022, -12.16.010, Table of Intensity Regulations, dwelling multifamily up to 3 stories inclusive. I'm sorry, excuse me, could you guys, excuse me. Can you guys talk outside? I'm sorry. Table of intensity regulations, dwelling multifamily up to 3 stories inclusive, specifically coverage, principal building, and density as per Plan CMID 045711-2022 at the property known as and number 204 Main Street, Malden, Mass., and also known by City Assessor's Parcel ID 064309925. And before we hear from the petitioner, Nelson Miller, the building commissioner, was going to come up and clarify some things for us.
I'm going to try. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. The reason I'm coming up first is because this is a relatively new ordinance that we have with the city, and it can get extremely confusing. Those of us that have been working on it and working with it get confused every time we look at it. So I wanted to just be able to clarify for all of you exactly what it is you're considering tonight for a variance so that we don't get too far into the weeds on some other things. So obviously the first thing that the variance is, that's being requested is principal building coverage. There's not a lot to talk about that. As far as an explanation, you're all aware of that. The principal building as proposed is about 35%, and they're allowed 30%, so the petitioner can talk about that. The second variance that's being required is, or requested is for density. So this is where this gets confusing because we have an inclusionary zoning ordinance now, which when you build a certain number of units, you have to comply with the inclusionary zoning ordinance. Compliance with that ordinance gives you certain bonuses for things, and density is one of them. So what the petitioner is proposing is a building with 33 units in it. We have to kind of look at it as if they're proposing a building with 29 units in it, and they have to build 4 units as affordable to comply. So those 4 units don't need to comply with any of the density rules. The lot, as it sits today, can actually accommodate 18 units and comply entirely with the density requirement. So the building has 33 units. The lot can support 18 of them. 4 of them we don't need to worry about. We can push those off to the side. So 18 and 4 is 22. That means they're requesting a variance for 11 units for density. And the density is 1,500 square feet per unit. So that is the quick explanation on the density variance. Of the 33 being constructed, only 11 are requesting, the variance is only for 11 of them. Only 11 of them exceed the density requirement. So hopefully that helps. The petitioner, I looked at their materials before they came in here tonight. They've done a good job of explaining this again with some charts and tables and things like that. And obviously, if there's any questions, I'll be right over here.
Nelson, I have a quick question. Sorry to get you back there. We can't grant a variance for the affordable housing requirement, correct?
I'm sorry?
We're not allowed to grant a variance for the affordable housing requirement itself, correct?
There's no variance of that, no. Nope. That was easy.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thomas Callahan with offices at 1 Center Street in Malden, here representing the 204 Main Malden LLC. I have with me Andreas Zitos, who is the principal of the LLC. Also with me, Scott Fitzpatrick, who is our construction consultant, as well as Rick Salvo, who's our engineer. So we have, I think, everyone here who is needed to answer any questions. We are here, as I think Nelson introduced, to seek two variances for the development of this site, the old Burns Funeral Home, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. Prominent location, prominent business, and we all had to pay some respects likely there one day or another. For your information, I think it's important to note that we're going to, if the board were to see fit to grant the variances tonight, we will need further zoning relief, and that zoning relief would be for the use. That is, we're in a neighborhood business district, which the use we're proposing is only by special permit, so we would have to then go to the planning board and seek a special permit. I just think that's important to be aware of. Further, the Historical Commission has already made a determination that this building is not significant, so that we are poised to take it down under the demolition ordinance. There was a bit of confusion, and I think Nelson Miller explained it rather well. It seems like with the new ordinance, like the inclusionary zoning, we have to tackle it and you have to back into it. And originally we had thought we had to provide 5 affordable units, but the more we calculated and reviewed it, it is 4 units based on backing it in rather than looking at it from a different angle. But we do take pride in this proposal in terms of our providing 4 affordable housing units, and I believe if we're not the first, we're certainly one of the first to propose a residential development with the inclusionary zoning component to it. It should be noted that we do meet all the dimensional requirements with the exception of the 2. That is, we meet the lot area, we meet setbacks, height, open space, all of the other dimensional requirements, and I think that's important. We held a neighborhood meeting with the Ward Councilor Peg Crow, and the neighbors, and we came away with several adjustments based on the neighbors' concerns. One was the neighbors were wanting to see us have guest parking spots. We originally had just conformed to the zoning requirement of 1 parking space per bedroom, but we did add 3 guest spots at the urging of the neighbors. Also, the neighbors to the right or to the north were concerned with the parking under, and we agreed to enclose that parking under so there'd be less disturbance to the abutters. You have here a view of the site in the existing neighborhood, but I think it's important to just take a minute to talk about the current building and a short bit of history. the existing structure is a 2.5-story. We're proposing a 3-story. It's a 2.5-story colonial style building built in approximately 1900. There's been many additions to the building over time to accommodate the funeral home that was there, and which makes the reuse of the building nearly impossible, but certainly very uneconomical. The property was purchased by the Burns family in 1929 and was used as a funeral home through 2021, so almost 100 years of this site being used as a funeral home. But at the same time, there was also residential use at this site. There was a rather large apartment, or rather large unit upstairs, that is upstairs on the second and third floors, which I understand the Burns family used for their home, or at least some of the time. And then there was also another apartment building, another apartment unit over the garage at the back of the building. And presently, the structure violates the setback, particularly the side yard setback on the north side. It's only 4 feet from the abutters. And our proposal is all our setbacks, of course, we met them, and they're all 20 feet or more. So that is certainly an improvement. We propose to demolish the existing funeral home and build a 3-story structure with 33 units, as Commissioner Miller mentioned. They're all small 1-bedroom units. We felt that that was a need in the community. We could have looked at fewer units and fewer units being larger, but we really focused on the 1-bedrooms, noting the need for those. They're all 600 to 720 square feet. So I think that gives you a sense of they're very modest size, to say the least. We have 25 parking spaces under the building, but we're also providing 11 surface spots to the side. And so you have the surface spots here in the parking in the gray there, and you have the parking under. That gives us, again, 36 parking spots with 3 spots for guests. So the first, I'm going to repeat just very quickly, I think what Nelson Miller already told you. There's 2 variance requests. One is on the building coverage, and the building coverage requirement is 30%. We're seeking 35% in our proposal. And secondly, we're seeking a variance from the density requirements because, again, our proposal is to have more smaller units rather than fewer larger units. So that requirement is based on the per unit basis, 1,500 square feet per unit. It's our position that the topography qualifies as a variance, particularly with the financial hardship involved, the 4 affordable housing units provided to the community, and the conformance with the conformance with substantially with the majority, a substantial majority of the dimensional requirements. I'd like to speak to the hardship. We did provide a worksheet for the board, and I think that went into some detail, but I'd like to summarize the financial hardship that is the result of the affordable units. The affordable units are reserved for households earning 50% or less of the median income in the Boston metropolitan area. And that's a fairly low standard. Most affordable ordinances have a much higher standard, sometimes 70 to 80% of the median income. And the Exhibit A to that worksheet I just mentioned outlines some key figures. And the first one is the total project cost is $11.8 million. with our rising construction costs in the area. Would like to have that lower, but that is a real number. Then, when you take the affordable housing units and capitalize the income for, when we have an appraisal done by our financing institution, we're told that the building is only worth 9.6 when it's fully constructed. So we have over a $2 million gap between what it's going to cost to build this project and what it's going to ultimately appraise out at when it's completed. And obviously, if it was 100% at market value, it would be much higher in terms of the appraisal once the building was complete. Additionally, in terms of the financial hardship, we've been told by our financing institution that they will only lend on 55% of the construction cost. Usually, commercial lending will go up to somewhere in the neighborhood of 65 to 70% of the cost, but here they're only willing to lend on 55% of the construction costs. So right there, Mr. Zitos has to invest $6 million of his own money in order to build this project, which I think is quite significant. So we recommend to you that there is really no substantial detriment to the public good, because we're providing 4 affordable units in an area that is in drastic need of affordable housing. So that's certainly not a detriment. In fact, that is a benefit to the public good to be providing these units. Also, we suggest that the project does not nullify the intent of the zoning, since we meet the vast majority of the dimensional requirements, and except for the 2 modest variance requests. So in conclusion, we believe that the board would be on firm ground in its discretion to grant these variances since we meet the statutory requirements. And we hope that you can appreciate the need for these smaller 1-bedrooms, and appreciate also us providing these 4 affordable housing units for the community. And we're certainly available to answer any of your questions, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. I may have missed it. Is this for rentals, or are you selling rentals?
This is rental housing, yes.
Thank you.
That's why you'd capitalize the income for appraised value with the rents.
The concern that I have with your argument is this seems like it would apply to any affordable housing project. Affordable housing almost always makes it a little bit more expensive to develop. So I'm not sure if wouldn't we have to give a variance then to everyone who comes forward with an affordable housing? And my second question is, if an 18-unit, if I understood Nelson, an 18-unit building could be built there, are there any comparables to show that there's no way financially to build a building that is compliant with zoning?
Well, let me answer, if I may, the last question. We can certainly build something. We can build a building that conforms to zoning because we do have a sizable lot. We have the parking. We've laid out parking for 36 spaces, so that we could put 36 bedrooms into that property. They'd just be larger units. So that you'd probably have to shrink the building up just slightly to address the building coverage. But as to the density, if you have fewer units, then the density keeps going down, right? So if you're not taking so we could put in 18 units, as I understand the calculation. We could put in 18 units in just larger units, and still have the 33 bedrooms, because we do have the parking to conform to zoning for those 33 bedrooms. So yes, we can conform to zoning but we're trying to take a project that has a need in the community, these smaller units, and provide more affordable housing, because of course, if you shrink the number of units, that shrinks the number of affordable units, because the affordable units are based on how many units you're building. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, to some extent.
If you did the 18 units, how many affordable units would the requirement be?
15%, so two. Two.
Maybe two instead of
My team's already done the math, yeah, two.
Are any of the units accessible?
Under the building code, we will be required to construct type 1 units in the building. It's new construction to be fully compliant with the current building code, except 521, the accessibility code, fire code, it'd be fully compliant. Yeah. Sorry, for the record, Scott Fitzpatrick, office at 67 Maplewood Street.
Have you looked at doing the 18 units? Is it financially viable? I mean, can you make the numbers work if it's done under the zoning?
It's very difficult to make it work with the 18 units. You need the bedrooms, because obviously a 3-bedroom gets more rent than a 1-bedroom. But we also met with the ward councilor when we purchased, in the process of purchasing the property, and the 1-bedrooms were really, what we were told was kind of, I don't know if vision is the right word, but that was the need, is, you know, larger units wasn't what she wanted to see on that site, as opposed to the smaller 1-bedroom, some affordable units. They're a decent sized 1-bedroom unit. They're not studios. They're a nice fit for a young professional, you know, young couple starting out. It's relatively close to the T. It's not a bad walk down to Malden Station. We got actually the bus stop right in front of the property. It's, you know, a lot of effort went into designing this and working with the ward councilor. We got some feedback from Councilor at Large Spatafora, the mayor's office on this. You know, we put a lot of effort into coming up with the right plan. It is a neighborhood business district, but we are surrounded by some Residence A as well. So, you know, I don't feel, you know, doing different type of uses in there either. You know, we got Residence A around the back, or Residence B, I forget exactly what it is. You know, so initially we looked at some other uses, but, you know, to put retail or office in there, which some of that is by right use, it wasn't a good fit in the neighborhood. The councilors didn't like it. The building is compliant with all the setbacks, as I think Councilor Callahan pointed out. The existing building over here was about 4 feet from the house that's set back on Main Street. We've had a lot of meetings with Lou, the owner, back there. We took down a tree that was damaged in his house. We addressed the garage concern he had. At our public meeting, we originally had a roof deck for open space, because that's a model we used in Everett that worked over there. The neighbors didn't like it. We immediately got rid of the roof deck, because the neighbors in Peg weren't happy with it. You know, and get back to the density a little bit, it's compliant with Malden zoning. Is a little funny, where the larger the building, the lower the density requirement. So now we're allowed to ask for a multifamily up to 3 stories in the zoning district. There was a time we could have asked for any residential use. I forget what year that changed. When you get into the next step of multifamily, which I believe is 3 to 6, Nelson, the density drops down to 1,000 square feet per unit. So we're actually in compliance with that density number. A 4-story building, believe it or not, wouldn't be taller than the building that's there right now. We did some site measurements, and we were about 46 feet to the peaks. Our proposed building is 32, so we're under the 35-foot requirement now on the 3-story building. So believe it or not, it's going to be shorter than the building that's there right now.
How does the footprint of this building compare to the existing building?
Rick, you have a, an overlay.
Okay.
This is huge parking lots that's here now. Building is a bit bigger.
Okay.
The green. Total impervious is really about the same.
Okay.
Because we're getting rid of a lot of pavement. It is getting replaced with building, but we actually end up with more green space, I believe, in this
Right.
plan.
I have a question about the process with the planning board. Can you walk through what you need to work out with them to get approved after you see us?
It's a special permit use, so we have to prove that the standard on a special permit is it's not more detrimental to the neighborhood. As part of that, we're gonna have to supply a traffic study. The planner will set the scope, how far we go. The counselor has already brought up some traffic mitigation that she's looking for. And I forget where exactly, there was some crosswalks and some pedestrian improvements she was looking for, and that'll be brought up during the traffic study portion and the peer review. The city will hire a peer review consultant to review the traffic study. And then, since it's a special permit use, we'll be going through this, the same, basically program explaining why we met with the counselor, why the 1 bedrooms as opposed to 33 or 36 bedrooms of a mix of 2 and 3 bedrooms. Addressing neighbor concerns as far as screening, noise, the look of the building. One of the abutters that was at the meeting we spoke to, if we're successful here tonight, we have a little more engineering and architectural work to do, getting more fine details of the building. So I think hope I answered your question.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there is any way where they can alleviate us granting you a variance for something, like they could give you approval for number of bedrooms over a number of units or something.
Because it's new construction, there is no special permit relief here right now, so even though it's a pre-existing non-conforming building, we're tearing it down, so it has to be dealt with at this board. I think there's case law backing that up now too, that that's the proper route for it. It is a unique lot for the neighborhood, for that zoning district, and it's, I think, and we, like I said, we worked with the ward council, we worked with the at-large council and the mayor's office, try to get the best fit on that lot for the reuse of the funeral home.
I do have one more question. You're asking for a variance for coverage. Your corridor looks pretty wide. I'm wondering if you could shrink the building just enough to maybe lose 2 parking spaces or, 60 by whatever your width of your parking is. And
The problem
condense
with
those units a little
shrinking the width of the building is the center aisle.
just like the back, like take off one strip of parking and then kind of condense all the units a little bit by making your corridor smaller. I'm curious if that would be about 5% or if it's asking for much more than that.
I haven't looked at that, I haven't done that math. The size unit we're working with is something that we're currently building elsewhere, and it's a comfortable unit. So I don't know shrinking them even a little bit works. I mean, it doesn't sound that small, but when you frame out a 600 or 700 square foot unit and you actually get the bedroom framed out in the kitchen and you lay out the cabinets, it's a nice usable space for 1 or 2 people, but shrinking the units much more to say take off 5% might make the units almost uncomfortable.
Yeah, the hallway looks like it's,
Because
7
the hall
feet wide.
runs up the middle, and that would shrink it this way,
Yeah,
which would cause an issue with the driveway and the parking. The center aisle between the 2 parking spots.
sorry, the corridor between the units looks pretty wide, as if you could narrow that, give some square feet from the corridor to the units, and maybe shrink the width of the units. And so I'm just wondering if there's a way to shuffle around some of those square feet and maybe get closer to the 30% lot coverage.
We're pretty tight. You know, I know the corridor is wide, but a lot of it was driven by the footprint of the parking in the lower level to keep most of the parking covered. The mechanical room, sprinkler room, trash room, that's the other thing. All the trash here, instead of having an outside dumpster, there's a fire-rated trash room in the lower level that'll have a compactor. The stairwells, the elevator. It's a pretty tight footprint for the amount of units.
I guess, what was the rationale, you know, because we weren't privy to your conversations with the city about sort of like the unit configuration, like what was the rationale between doing all one bedrooms? Because I know usually, you know, people like sort of like a mix.
I think the biggest argument for the one bedrooms is it doesn't typically affect the school department. So if we end up with one bedrooms, the chance of getting a school-aged child in this building, that's gonna, you know, then now create a load on the school system is, I mean, it's not big enough. You know, you're not gonna have a parent and a child living in the 600 square foot one bedroom. If we build the 18 2 and 3 bedrooms, you are gonna have families in there. It increases the demand on the schools. And there is a need for affordable units for single people. You know, in the last, you know, since the early 2000s until, I think there was one other project that came since the affordable zoning was adopted, and they opted not to build them. They bought out of them. You know, we're building the units. The city built a lot of units between the early 2000s and the last couple of years, between all the redevelopment down here, 480 Main Street, the Rose Quarry, the Point at 180. There was, you know, thousands of units built, but not one affordable, and the rents are very high. So even the one bedrooms, there's a need for people who want to stay in Malden, want to be relatively close to the T, but quite frankly can't afford the rents of, you know, the building across the street, to be right across and hop on the train and go in Boston to work.
Any other, just out of curiosity, and this has nothing to do with any decision or anything, but what will the market rate units rent for?
One bedroom.
It tends to be 2,000, 2,100, because they pay their own utilities.
Okay,
It'll be sub-metered water meter.
okay.
We'll probably use like the Mitsubishi units.
Mm-hmm.
There won't be any gas in the building.
Right,
It'll be electric.
okay. Just so the board knows, I think the one bedrooms across the street are about, they're pushing 3,300.
It's, you know, and then the affordables, they stay with the building. They don't come off like even some of the federal developments that were built that use the HUD money, that they're affordable for 30 years, and when the note's paid off, if they don't re-up the loan with HUD, there was a development here in Malden, down off of Easton Ave, that almost happened with, you know, these are lifetime. They're deed restricted in their lifetime, and the gap, over the life of the building, the gap gets greater on the affordable units, especially at 50% of the AMI, which is,
It'll be about $1,000 for one bedroom.
Right,
Very affordable.
yeah,
Small units.
right.
you know, which, with the thousands of units that have been built, you know, 4 is a small start, but it's a start. And I know there's some other projects in the pipeline bringing some more forward, but,
And now we have new challenges with the interest rate going up.
I'm sorry, just, I don't care. We just need, when you're speaking, we need you to say who you are and all, and your
My name
address.
is Andrea Citos.
Okay.
Now the new challenge is with the interest rate going up.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we have construction costs that are high, the interest rate just went up.
Yeah.
It's making it even harder for us,
Right.
so.
Any other questions or comments from the board?
Could this be proposed as a 40B project?
No.
Why not?
The city is, I believe, over the 10% right now, and as well as they adopted the affordable, the inclusionary zoning, but I believe Malden also did a land calculation, didn't they? Yeah, we're exempt on that. They're exempt on the gross land area calculation as well. So,
I think also if it actually qualified for a 40B, it would be much more than four units that are affordable.
40B, I think, is a minimum of 20. Is it 25 now?
And then require 10% to be 3 bedrooms.
So it couldn't be a 40.
No, in the 40B, you know, you see a lot more density. You know, I was just working on one on the other side, and the lot density, when they bring a 40B forward, is a lot like this. On a 40B, would see probably 50 units, at least, especially where the sewer in the street, where they're not, where you're not looking for septic calculations and stormwater, wastewater to work on site.
And we have a similar lot we're developing right now in Everett, 30 Beecham Street, and slightly smaller lot, 25,000 square feet, this is 27,000. We got 51 units.
Wow.
All one bedrooms.
Wow.
Near the casino.
And that's 80% of well, their affordable is 80%. We have 10% affordable in that building at 80% of the AMI. So that building was a little easier to finance because it's, the percentage was a little less, but the 80% helps. And
Yeah,
the 50's
the
tough.
income's better, yeah.
The 50's very tough. You know, and I just do want to point out, you know, we acquired this, I think, last November. We put a lot of time and effort in meeting with, you know, the ward counselor and to come up with a plan. You know, we didn't just throw together something and come running in. We put a lot of time into this with the stakeholders.
Okay. Anything else from the board? All right, thank you. We have a couple letters here from various folks. Before I get into those, is there anybody here that wants to speak in favor of the project? I can't see who else is back there. Is there anyone that wants to speak in opposition to the project? I can't see the people behind the sign, so, but I don't hear anything. Oh, okay. Okay, so I have 3 letters here, and they are all in favor of the project. The first letter being from Mayor Gary Christensen. Dear members of the Board of Appeal, I write in support of the applicant requesting a variance of section 12.16.010 of the revised ordinances of the City of Malden relative to the property at 204 Main Street, parcel ID 064309925. The petitioner specifically seeks to vary the provisions set forth in the table of intensity regulations, specifically coverage of a principal building and density. The property consists of a 2.5-story structure that includes the former site of a funeral business with residential uses on the 2nd and 3rd floors. There is also another apartment unit over the existing garage. The current layout of the property includes several additions, making a reuse of the building as is non-economical. The petitioner proposes to construct a 3-story structure that will accommodate 33 one-bedroom rental units, 5 of which will be dedicated as affordable, but I think the number's 4, right? Okay.
With the fee that we have to pay on the,
Okay. The proposal will also meet all dimensional controls except for building coverage and the density requirement. The proposed plan does not conflict with surrounding land uses, provides adequate parking, and will greatly enhance this property. More importantly, the plan addresses the current housing needs of the community and provides much-needed affordable units. In addition, after a well-attended neighborhood meeting, the petitioner has amended the plan to address some of the concerns expressed by residents. Again, I respectfully request that the board look favorably upon this petition. I thank you for your consideration, and please contact me if you need further information. Sincerely, Gary Christensen, Mayor, City of Malden. The next letter is from Craig Spatafora, City Council President. Dear Chairman Kramer and Malden Planning Board members, I think that's supposed to say Malden Board of Appeals members. I am writing to express my full support for 204 Main Street, for 204 Main Street project. The application will redevelop an old funeral home and afford us the additional housing units in the Ward 1 neighborhood of Malden. The initiative is centered around 33 one-bedroom apartments. Did the plans change at some point? I'm sorry. Is it 33 units? It's 33. Okay. This one also says 5 of which will be affordable to help the underserved, overburdened, and disadvantaged by safe and modern living conditions. It will also start a path for an economic development and enhance transportation access by improving the housing stock while providing ample parking for its residents. The project will complement other revitalization activities focused on the neighborhood, which includes important social, economic, and natural assets. The area surrounding the proposed development has seen significant development over the past 10 years. The city, in collaboration with the developer, has partnered to make this development a cornerstone of the neighborhood. I realize that developer is seeking density relief from 1,500 square feet per unit to 1,089 square feet per unit, and relief on lot coverage from the required 30% to 35.3. I support granting this relief, which will help fulfill the community's aspirations for workforce opportunities, housing stabilization, and providing affordable units for long-term prosperity of our residents. As a city council at large, I have made it a priority to support innovative housing projects that strive to improve connectivity and provide opportunities for economic development in traditionally underserved areas. This development will provide opportunities, substantial parking, affordability, and with the design of only one bedrooms, have a low impact on city services. I believe this development, with its sharp focus on underutilized sites like this one, will accelerate neighborhood revitalization and development. This development will truly be a unique experience for the residents of Malden and the surrounding neighborhood. I believe that this project aligns with both my priorities as an elected official. Please accept this letter of support for this application. I fully support this application and look forward to the project's successful implementation. Sincerely, Craig Spatafora, Council President, Council at Large. And the third letter is from Peg Crow, Ward 1 City Councilor. Dear Chairman and members, I'm writing this letter in support of the variance sought by 204 Main Street LLC. In March 2022, we had a neighborhood meeting that was very well attended to introduce the project. The petitioner listened to the neighbors and made suggested changes to the project, including adding 3 visitor parking spots, eliminated a roof deck, and ensuring the garage will house 25 of the total 36 parking spots is fully enclosed. The proposed project includes 33 housing units with 5 units designated as affordable and is located on a bus line with easy access to public transportation. This 3-story building fits into the surrounding neighborhood and meets an express need for additional housing. The fact that these units are all 1-bedroom ensures the property will not be overburdened. Tonight, they are seeking relief for lot coverage and density. The proposed project lot coverage is off by 5.3% and is 411 square feet shy of the required 1,500 square foot of land area per unit. It might be noted that the required for a 4 to 6 story building requires only 1,000 square feet of land per unit. I mention that to say a building 4 to 6 stories might meet the lot coverage and density requirements, but may not fit into the neighborhood. It may result in more bedrooms that could overburden the property and neighborhood. After hearing from the neighbors and the alterations made by the petitioner to meet neighborhood concerns, it is my position that the benefits of this project outweigh the deficiency in density and lot coverage. I respectfully urge the board to grant the requested variances. If you require any additional information, please feel free to contact me. Respectfully submitted, Peg Crow, Ward 1 City Councilor. Okay. That was all the letters. All in favor. There were none in opposition. Did any more questions, comments, or concerns from the board? Does anybody want to make a motion?
I'd like to separate the two variances for a motion. I didn't see sufficient evidence for lot coverage. I think right now the plans are kind of schematic and not well-defined for the spaces around the building, but I feel like with that many units, you really need some good usable space around the building, and so I'm not going to put forth a motion for the lot coverage, but I do appreciate the engagement with the community and the city councilor and accommodating a need for 1 bedrooms within the city, if that's comparable to, say, 18 2-bedrooms or 18, even less than 18 3-bedrooms. I think there's something to be said for the cost of all those extra kitchens to accommodate requests by abutters in the city. So I'd put a motion forward to approve the variance requesting relief on density only.
I'll second it.
Did anybody want to, so we would take a vote on that and then have a second motion, a different motion for the coverage? Okay.
Density only on this one?
Correct. The requested 11 units over the typical density allowed.
Okay, on motion by Bilgan, second by Chu, to approve the variance of density. We'll take the call. Sullivan,
Yes.
Sherwin,
No.
Bilgan,
Yes.
Chu,
Yes.
Yes.
Kramer. Okay, so, all right, so the variance and density has the approval, 4 yes, 1 no. So that is approved, that's granted for density. All right. And we're going to do lot coverage?
Does anybody want to make a motion for the lot coverage?
I motion to oppose it, not approve it.
I'll second that.
Yep.
So for the record, Rick Salvo with Engineering Alliance. I just want to make the point, just because it was brought up, it's the lot coverage is a formula that has to do with the lot area. So it's not shrinking this building by 5% to meet the lot coverage. It would be shrinking the total lot area by 5% to meet the coverage. So it's not like you could chop 8 feet off this building to meet the lot coverage. You'd have to chop 24 feet off. Moreover, there's an open space requirement that requires 250 square feet per dwelling unit. We're providing 288 square feet per dwelling unit, so we do exceed that. I just want to point that out to the board. I was afraid the board might think that if we shrunk this building by 5%, we'd meet it. It's 5% of the 27,000 square feet that we would need to be able to meet it.
Gotcha, okay. Thank you. So that motion is still, a motion was made and seconded to oppose.
I mean, I'll just throw out my thoughts on this. I think it's a great project. I certainly support this kind of housing in the city, but I think it's a more appropriate decision for the city council to make, to be changing the zoning variance for this kind of building. I think it's outside our purview. They can put a building there within zoning, so there's really no hardship here. There's, you know, if you could build something, that's not hardship. So as much as I really think it's a great project, I don't think it's appropriate for a variance on either count. I'll just throw out, we had a co-housing project a couple of years ago, where the same issue came up. I thought it was a great project. It needed quite a few variances. We didn't give them a variance. They went to the planning board and whatnot, and they changed the zoning ordinance accordingly, and they got it approved, you know, through a change. And I think that's a little more appropriate here. We're trying to fit a project in here that just doesn't really fit within the zoning without a good exception for it.
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to Adam's earlier comment about, you know, if the only hardship is like financial, you know, that applies to a lot of different things that come before us on the board, so it's.
The only gnome that I'm aware of for a hardship would be a showing that they can't build anything there practically, and I didn't see that presented. I didn't see anything that said that, you know, that you can't build any kind of building there, which is a very hard threshold to meet. And again, I didn't think that was presented to us, that it's impossible to put anything in that parcel.
Ready for,
Yes.
all right. Okay. Voting to oppose the variance for lot coverage. Motion by Sherwin, second by Bilgan. Okay, that's a Sullivan?
No.
Sherwin?
I'm sorry, this is a motion to oppose it,
To
correct?
oppose,
Yeah,
correct?
yes, yeah.
Yes, okay. Bilgan?
I oppose.
Two?
Can I abstain?
Abstain. Then we'll have to go to code of variance, right? Or can he, if she abstains, which is,
Well, can I vote to abstain, or I just have to vote yea or nay?
I think you can abstain, but I don't think we can replace you with someone else
Right.
at
so
this
we
point.
wouldn't-
Because the chairman already announced you as a member, so.
Okay.
So I think you can abstain, but we can't put in someone, that's just my thought offhand, I don't know if
I
that's
mean, an
right.
abstention would just be treated as like in favor of the motion, right, or would be against the motion?
I'm not sure.
yes, no, yes,
I'll vote to support the motion.
excuse me?
I'll vote to support the motion.
And Kramer.
No.
All right, so this part here will, would leave us with no decision. We can't.
So it's 3-2, so
Just
is there
3-2.
another?
Try and make another motion, anyone?
So we need at least 4 votes.
We need at
We
least
do,
4.
yeah.
Can they come back after the planning board if we request they withdraw their petition for lot coverage and have them come back after the planning
I
board?
think there's a lot
You
more
can't
work.
apply to
They
you can't apply to the planning board without having all the relief. So without having something that complies fully with zoning or the relief in hand, we can't apply to the planning board. So we would, based on Rick's testimony about the actual size of what would be cutting off the building, the relief really goes hand in hand. The project doesn't work without both the density and the lot coverage. You wouldn't fit the units based on square footage cutting off the building. I forget what the number was, but yeah, 6 units by the engineer's calculations.
I think if we take no action, then I think it gets approved anyway.
That's true. If we,
Can't do that again.
yeah. And nobody wants to make another motion? Sorry. Okay.
I'd rather see a revised plan that's not 35. I think even if you got it down to 32 or something smaller, I'd believe that you can't go smaller than 32, but I think they're pretty generous right now, and there's a lot of units that are pretty generous, so I think if you just took a pass at squeezing it a little bit, I know the parking is a problem, but I think you could.
Yeah, and if we squeeze the building, we squeeze out, then we're looking for additional relief on parking aisles and, down through there. And that's in the zoning too, so.
Yeah, I'm talking more about how wide is your parking space?
I believe they're 18 feet,
Rick, 9?
By 9 feet?
9 by 18.
Yeah, I think you could easily get a 9-foot strip, and if that's all you could do, then I might believe that, but I'd rather see revised plans that just pinches the whole building 9 feet before I say that there's a hardship.
You mean take off 9 feet back?
Yeah,
It would be actually, it would take off 2 apartments in the back.
no, I don't see a hardship here with the size of the units and the size of the corridor. I really do think that there's some areas to pinch. And so they might be smaller 1-bedrooms, 2 feet, a number of them, but I don't see a hardship right now for lot coverage based on the size of those units and the size of the corridor. Parking, I understand, but maybe 2 more get exposed as opposed to covered.
I guess the only place that the hardship comes into place is we've exceeded the open space requirement. So and those should balance each other out.
Could you do the guest parking as, a different type of hardscape that maybe is more about the open space and less about asphalt?
We could take the whole, the guest spaces and make it a pervious paver patio that could become a patio.
Yeah, I'd like to see
But
some.
that would increase the open space, right? It's 250 required per unit. We have 288 per unit as it stands right now, so it would just increase it even more. That could easily be done.
I didn't understand the 5% until you explained it to me. That's significant.
Yeah.
And getting back to the 40A hardship, a lot unique to the zoning district. That's one of the criteria under 40A.
That's one, that's not hardship, though.
That's one of the criteria that leads to the hardship, which is the financial, based on the development of this property. If every lot in that zoning district was that exact same size, it wouldn't meet the unique criteria. It's a good sized lot, but it's too small for a lot of uses that are allowed by right in the neighborhood business district to comfortably put them on that lot and provide adequate space in screening and actually some of those uses would reduce them. So, you know, some of the uses would push this building closer to the residential. Some of the allowed uses in the neighborhood business only require a 10-foot setback. You know, so it's very unique where it's surrounded. It's a good size, but it's really not big enough. But it's not, you know, small. It's not single-family lots either. It was an existing commercial mixed use that operated as a funeral home for 100 years. You know, so, I mean, I'm under that 40A, unique to the zoning district. You know, obviously my opinion is it meets that, and that's what leads to the financial hardship under 40A for granting the variances. You know, the units are tight. You know, we're building them right now. I have them framed out. They're drywalled. We're putting finishes in them right now. And these are very similar units.
I'm an architect and I work on multifamily in every city around here, so I can compare square feet and I can tell you that these are pretty generous, and there's definitely a few that are extra generous. So I'd love to see you come back with a revised plan that's slightly less than 35%.
Yeah, and I'm gonna jump in, I'm gonna make a motion that we table. I don't think we're gonna get anywhere right now. You know our concerns, you know mine. If you can change it, you know, I'm happy to reconsider it, but I think maybe another, you know, maybe kicking this out a month may help us to give a little more thought to it.
Even if we make them like 50 square feet smaller, it might affect it by 1%.
I'd like to see that, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know how, you know, the benefit.
I mean, is that, so is that what, yeah, no, but I 100% agree. I'm just trying to get the feedback to
It's a very long, boxy building. I think there's a lot of reasons why it's worth looking at the coverage. It's not just the coverage, it's the look of the building, how obtrusive it is to the surrounding neighborhoods. It's not contextual. There's a lot of things, and I think that looking at this under a microscope will definitely help every part of this project. So I really do think before I put any motion forward to approve lot coverage, it should be looked at again.
Is there a square foot number per unit that
You would like to see.
that you're?
No, I just want to see it
No,
pass.
I mean, I'm just trying to get as much feedback to bring back to the, you know, to the architect and.
I think that if you could pinch the building 9 or 10 feet and bring it in, I visually can see that as a possibility, and to me that seems better than 35% lot coverage.
And even though it's not the 30, but you shrink the building 9 feet or 10 feet.
Right, it might still be 32, 33, whatever it is. I think that there would be an advantage to looking under a microscope and trying to shrink the building a little bit.
We would lose 2 parking spaces.
Or we would put them outside. We would,
Because you'd have more green space, you'd have more room.
with the green.
No?
And then relocate the parking to the outside and maybe adopt a pervious, when the green space calculations.
Was that a formal motion to table it?
No, I'm making, yeah. I
Okay,
don't think we're
I'll
gonna get
second
anywhere.
that motion to table it.
The whole thing, right?
Thank you. Thank you. Patty, when do you need the, oh, Kathy, I'm sorry, Patty. When do you need the submissions for, how far in advance to get back on the agenda?
Is it usually 10 days before the meeting?
I think it's usually what we pick, the reason being is we want the public to be able to see as well. So I would, as part of my motion, I'll say 10 days, is that fine, 10 days?
Yeah, and if we don't get it for, I don't know if you have a December meeting with the holidays.
We do, but, I mean, even if it goes to January, it's fine.
Will they, if it goes to January, will they sign a waiver of time?
So, we didn't, oh, that was a 3-2 vote.
But we're
What are we-
tabling it now?
We can table it, if it goes more than 65 days, though, so.
Are we up
75
against the
days.
65
I'm
days?
trying to think, so it's November, December.
We can sign the extension if you need.
Yeah, so like 60 days.
All right, so my motion is to table it to the next meeting, conditional on 10 days before, and a written agreement with the board to toll any of those agreements.
I'll second that.
Okay. All right, on motion by Sherwin, second by Bilgan to table. Our next meeting is scheduled currently for December 21st. New plans to be submitted 10 days before the next meeting, and you will submit a letter of a waiver of time if you need more.
Do you have a form you use or just a letter from Tom?
Yep, that's fine, okay.
Just an email or it's fine,
Yep,
right?
that's fine, yep. Okay, we're gonna take a vote. All right, Sullivan,
Yes.
Sherwin,
Yes.
Bilgan,
Yes.
Chu,
Yes.
Kramer.
Yes.
All right, 5, all in favor to table until the December 21st meeting.
Would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.